Oh, hello, hello. How's everyone doing? Have a good break. Welcome back. I have a very special announcement today. But first, my name is Peter Hamilton, and I am the Senior Director of Ad Innovation at Roku. I won't bore you with my background, but I'm super passionate about performance and D2C, and that's why I came to Roku, because I think there's a huge opportunity in CTV. And that's also why I'm so excited to be making this announcement here at Grow NY, because you're the perfect audience to help build this vision for the future. So the news. Today we announced that Roku and Shopify have built an on-screen checkout experience together.
So I'm going to bring on Joe Anhalt, who's the VP of Marketing at Koio, and Miles Fisher is Director of the Ad Platform and Growth Sales at Roku. So please welcome them on board.
Hello? I don't know how the hell we're supposed to follow that.
Yeah.
This is your note. This is your note. This is my note. Kidding.
Awesome. Let's kick this off with just some intros, and we'll start with you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Joe. Thanks for joining us. So Miles Fisher, I lead our ad platform and growth sales here at Roku. So what that really means is we enable marketers to use our self-serve platform to access Roku inventory as well as all other CTV inventory that are on a Roku device. And we work with marketers and all different shapes and sizes. And based on Peter's announcement that he just made, we're really excited about expanding that into the DTC marketplace and focusing on performance.
That's where I come in. Joe, VP of Marketing at Koio, a luxury footwear brand based here in New York, in Soho. Been working in D2C for 8+ years now. And yeah, excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Miles.
Amazing, guys. Thank you. So I think we've had a theme of connected TV talk. So let's just go a little bit deeper. Clearly, connected TV became a part of your growth strategy. When did that happen? When did you test it? Like, how did it all come about? What was that opening point?
So full transparency, we were experimenting with this in Q4 of this year, and the inspiration for it was it's been really challenging for us to compete on Facebook and Google with our competitors, right? We are a luxury price point. Our hero product is very similar to what Miles is wearing today, and it's really just challenging to tell our story in such a short amount of time on Facebook and Google and things like that. And we're selling, yes, these luxury products, but we're also selling this lifestyle, this aspirational lifestyle. We're trying to communicate this level of perceived value that can justify the price point when there's so many other competitors at half the price, right? So we feel like we need to be experimenting more with these storytelling platforms, CTV being one of them. And we're really excited to do that Q4 and have a lot of ownership over the entire process. The analytics as well is really exciting to us, but yeah, that's been the inspiration, trying to find more storytelling platforms to tell our story.
You talk about Q4 being kind of when you're going to roll out with it. What's the strategy there? Why wait? And what's the thought process there?
I mean, Q4, baby, that's the sweet spot for everybody, right? So we want to strike while the iron is hot. We want to set ourselves up for success. It also gives us some time to develop more creative and produce that. It takes a lot of time, effort, and money. And so we'll be using Q3 to do that, and then, yeah, launch in Q4.
Yeah, and I think the way that we've been talking about it is one of the values that Roku has in the ecosystem is we're both a publisher, we own the Roku channel, but we're also a platform, right? And the whole story of Roku, it's a 20-year-old company. We've been in the ads business for about 8 years. But really everything that we do is audience and data driven, right? And I think that's the biggest difference between as TV has gone from linear to connected, the power of audiences, buyers that are used to search and social, now bringing that to the big screen, but also bringing that broad reach. And the thing we were talking about as part of the prep as well is the power of TV in the middle of the country, right? And Google and Facebook are amazing machines, but there's an inherent coastal bias and a lack of reach for certain segments, and that's in the middle of America where Roku over-indexes, and for a demo that is continually getting older watching TV that historically was digitally native first, kind of those original Facebook or Snapchat users.
That's incredible. I think to touch on, I haven't heard that part of it where you can almost hit a completely new audience that's not being tapped into. Let's talk about kind of audience and measurement. And maybe you can touch on a little bit about what you've seen with brands and how they're coming in with maybe a certain stigma and how you're maybe shifting that with measurement.
Yeah, so when we think about audiences and data, we kind of think of it in two buckets, right? Because we own the operating system and we own the glass of a Roku TV, we see ACR data. So, right, that's recognition of what's happening in the linear stream. And then we marry that with what's happening within the apps on the connected devices. So understanding somebody's watching Hulu or Pluto or Philo, right? And that becomes a really compelling story for brands to understand where people are watching in kind of a legacy model as well in a future model. And then you take that, you create segments, and you run those either on Roku inventory, on our partner inventory. But we look at that holistically. And the key to all of that we have on the Roku platform is what we call the Roku Ad ID. So in mobile, you had the mobile Ad ID, right? On desktop, you had the cookie. But what the Roku Ad ID allows you to do is manage reach and frequency holistically, and then tie that measurement back to some sort of behavior, whether that's a site visit, a checkout, and actually looking at business outcomes.
It's incredible. Wow. I'd love to hear kind of you mentioned you're going to be taking some time to prep creative. What are you studying to even prep this creative? Or how are you kind of creating that initial set of content? Where's the inspiration coming from?
Yeah, so it's been interesting at Koio. We've been trying to utilize the traditional D2C playbook, the first order discount, the conversion rate optimizations, things like that. And I feel like within the past few months, while things have been a bit slower, it's given us an opportunity to kind of reapproach how we think about our marketing efforts and really pivoting to more brand and brand awareness. And I think we're seeing this across, Fortune 500 companies. I think Airbnb is one of the best examples of this, where I think they've brought down their performance to like 0, right? And it's all brand now. A lot of that has to do with the hiring of Johnny Ive and trying to follow this Apple model, right? And that's kind of where we're at as well, right? Apple has been and continues to be the best performing luxury brand in the world, right, by far. And the way they do that is through brand and TV and commercials. And so that's where we're at, kind of coming back to the basics of luxury advertising and taking a step out of D2C world, right? And it's challenging to do that because it takes a lot of time, effort, and money on the production side. But what's nice is we can save on the other side of it, right? The actual ad buy, the media buy. And that's given us the opportunity, again, to put that money into the creative production. And again, it all comes down to storytelling.
Yeah, and it's been really interesting. We work with Airbnb a little bit, and there's kind of two ways that we're thinking about creative, especially in this space, right? There's kind of what Peter was talking about with allowing users to kind of use a Roku remote because they're logged in. We have email, phone number, credit card information, because if you buy a movie, you have a credit card already loaded in there. So we have this seamless checkout with Shopify. We also have overlays that can click to mobile, to SMS, and really tie the big screen to the small screen. But the other thing that we're also seeing a lot of adoption of is our brand studio. And as brands are looking to get into original content and started creative storytelling, so whether that's building a 15 or a 30-second spot, or even some people doing syndicated originals. We've worked with Ally Bank. We just announced something with Unilever, right? So how can you create content that a user doesn't even think is an ad, but they get excited about the brand and they have that kind of affiliation? And that's where we're really seeing a lot of success as well.
I think it's a good segue into like just the concept of making streaming more democratized. What's your thoughts on that? And do you think we're inching closer to that point with kind of the availability of platforms and tools like Roku?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Roku was born, right, to make dumb TVs smart, right? We used to plug sticks and pucks into the back of, you had a Sony Vega, like a gigantic TV, right? We're making our own TVs end-to-end integrated. Prices of TVs have gone down, right? They're the only things that cost less than it did 10 years ago. But what that also means is the ability to access that inventory at scale with data-driven capabilities is something that now all marketers of all sizes can do. Yep. And I think for us, when we talk about democratization, it's really, in two buckets. We have our ad platform, which allows you to do it self-serve, but because of where we sit in the ecosystem, we get inventory from any app that is advertising on our platform. So we can be a one-stop shop for marketers. We call it the Roku Audience Network. Very simple. You come in, you buy, you access Philo, Tubi, Hulu, anything that has an ad. And that ability to look at that reach just out of the gate is something that you can't really do from any publisher in the ecosystem.
Oh, it's amazing. I'd love to hear from both of you guys. When it comes to like brands that you guys think are winning on CTV, maybe whether it's their content strategy or the fact that they're spending a lot, What are maybe some brands that come to mind that we can draw inspiration from?
Well, you mentioned Airbnb. You guys work with a little bit. Again, I'll just bring them up. Again, I think they're doing a tremendous job. And just stepping back, just thinking about like video and media in general right now, Airbnb for sure. The other few that we have our eye on right now, especially in New York, is ALD. They've done a phenomenal job with their video and their content marketing. Jacques Mousse, I think, is fantastic. What he does fantastic, like so well, is just like his live shows, but those capture so well on video and photography. Yeah, I can't say enough about him. And then the third one is a smaller one called Tekla. They're kind of the new luxury darling based in Copenhagen. They do textiles and robes and things like that, but they shoot on film most of their content. But it's very simple, very basic, but very striking images, right? And it takes a lot of talent and time and effort to do that. But yeah, those are the three that we've been following most recently.
Yeah, I think a couple others that are large partners of ours and doing some cool stuff. DraftKings. So it's really interesting when you want to do a brand launch, right? One of the powers of CTV is being able to own that by geo, and especially if you're doing something like sports betting, right? You can only reach a certain demo, and those restrictions get opened up state by state, right? And then there's seasonality around different sports leagues and where people are spending their time. So they use our tools and technology to do that, which has been a really exciting one. Some of the other ones, we do a lot in the CPG space. Liquid IV is a really big partner of ours. The partnership that Peter just announced around Shopify, we've had that with Walmart for about a year, right? So any brand in the CPG space that's been distributed in Walmart, that same click-to-purchase flow. So we've seen a lot in that space that have been really, really successful.
It's incredible. Let's play a little bit of Mythbusters here. If you had to break one of the myths that many people probably have on their mind when it comes to connected TV, what would you say it is?
That it's hard to get started, right? I think one of the things, and again, Joe and I were talking about this backstage, or when I talk to brands or agencies, it's really easy to get from 0 to 1. I think a lot of the folks in this room have become masters of specific channels, really 2 channels, search and social. And I think the best thing that we want to do is test and iterate. We talk about incrementality a lot, and we've built a lot of that into our models. So I think people are intimidated about it, especially because CPMs are higher than search and social, but like anything, like shoes, right? Cost comes with quality, right? So you have to articulate the value of every impression.
I think too, on the production side, when people think of CTV or linear or just video production, they often think high price point in terms of actually paying for that, right? But you can get creative and you can cut costs, right? A good idea executed well doesn't have to be hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So that's the challenge that we're all facing right now. How do we make $1 million spot with $10,000? And it can be done, right? It just has to be a good idea, has to be good creative, and has to be executed well. But it all comes down to that idea, that story. What are you trying to communicate? How can you do it on $10,000 instead of $100,000, right? And there's so many examples out there where you don't need a big budget. Again, I keep coming back to this, but Airbnb, their video ads these days are just still images of people at Airbnbs enjoying their time, right?
That submarine spot, specifically, I think of, you hear yellow submarine, and you have all those, funny or very cool, depending upon what your perception of them are. And that resonates, right? Like, the other thing that they've done a really good job of, and what we've been working with them, is managing reach and frequency and being able to bucket users who have seen a certain number of ads at certain number of exposures and using data to match the creative, right? So that's how you make the dollars go further. So whether you're doing things to save money on the production side or just being really smart about who you're reaching with which ad. And I think a lot of people conflate this idea of performance with accountability, right? Brand dollars can be accountable, but they don't need to necessarily be attributed the same way as performance. And I think when you can make the case that you are landing with the right audience, you are changing brand perception, the dollars and the business outcomes will follow.
Love that. I'd love to kind of touch on if you can maybe draw on any examples of brands that have kind of come to Roku, a connected TV concept, because they were struggling somewhere else and are using you guys as a gateway to maybe normalize or bring down blended CAC or get just more eyeballs for a lower cost, whatever it may be. Do you maybe can draw on any examples where you had that scenario?
Yeah, I think a few that come to mind are a little bit in the supplement nutrition space. Thorne, Golo, those guys have really come to us. I think it's super competitive when you think about, just there's so many choices in such a competitive category around just, wellness and health and consumption. So, the ability to think differently than the competition, which is what you were talking about, right? And we were, again, spending money on your own branded keywords to own your brand becomes a race to the bottom. And especially when you are a luxury item and somebody's ripping off a style, right? It comes really hard to defend your turf. So often it is more effective to go find a new turf to fight on. And I think, one of the things we're really excited about connected TV and folks in this room, like people say growth, right? People say growth hackers. And search and social have been hacked, right? Like CTV has not been hacked yet. And whichever brand figures that out first and at scale will be, we'll look back, the way that we talked about Allbirds or Warby kind of winning that first wave of this kind of DTC wave.
I think it's a fantastic point. I think when kind of what you touched on too, like there are certain categories where you've hit saturation points on search and social, so you almost need a new kind of fresh audience and the take on it too. So I'm sure that's a lot of your perspective going into Q4.
And I was just going to pile on that too. The machine is broken from a measurement perspective, right? I spent a lot of my career at Google and worked on the Google Analytics side of things. And I think Apple announced some stuff just as late as yesterday is just different things that you're able to capture. And the $5 you would put into that machine is not getting the same ROAS or CAC that you used to, right? So I think one thing we're focused on at Roku is that consumer identity, the ability to measure. And, we work with partners on the brand side and the agency side, and we're really trying to meet buyers where they are. And I think if you can help solve that problem, which is you had these ways of working, you need to have new places to allocate it. That's how you can kind of build this new machine. And to your point, like what was the thing about getting started with CTV? It's building that trust.
Amazing. Is there anyone who shouldn't do connected TV or test it? Is there size of brand or revenue point or testing budget where if you're at this point, maybe it's not for you yet? Any maybe insight there?
I don't think so, right? Like we're starting to build some tools that are even making it more democratized, some other self-serve that can really do small budgets that we'll be kind of coming out with later this year. But right now, we think that, especially in this environment, the real opportunity is that more people are spending time watching streaming than there are dollars being allocated to streaming, right? So it doesn't matter if you're P&G or a really small startup, there's opportunity, right? How you allocate those dollars and the strategy and where you find those pockets is like where we work and try to collaborate with brands. But there's definitely, more eyes on the inventory than there are dollars allocated.
Well said. Anything to add there?
No, I'm just excited about this kind of shift from, again, just like the Metas of the world and Googles of the world into something new and interesting and creative, right?
So I think the goal is next year at Grow NY, we're back on stage. You've invested a ton of money in connected TV, and your brand has been killing it.
All right, you heard it here first.
There you go.
To the moon.
Well, with that, thank you so much, guys. And round of applause for them, guys.